Everyone, welcome to the Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It is technically Thursday night, but it's Friday. Here to break down the 8-game MLB slate. First look for me too. Typically, I do a lot more research than what I've done before this one, but opening day, enjoyed it. Worked a lot. A lot of interesting stuff going on opening day. Baltimore exploded. Mackenzie Gore was the great Mackenzie Gore and not the bad Mackenzie Gore. That was cool to watch. I feel like I had a lot of good stuff. Twins, obviously disappointed. The Angels, I ended up being underweight on the Angels, so that didn't hurt me as bad as others, but Angels kind of disappointed. They messed up our 3-pick parlay as well. But yeah, overall, love opening day. Love all the comments on the YouTube page. Glad to be back. We'll have this on normal podcasts, downloading and everything like normal. Abreu, 2 home runs, huge. Hit for 5K. Congrats, Eric. Huge day. That's awesome. But yeah, normal podcast, download on like Spotify and Apple on this show because I did not upload it. I did not click the right button before I started. I was rusty. I said I was rusty. Definitely a little rusty. So yeah, excited for this slate. I think it's going to be a really interesting slate. Lot to talk about. We got Charlie Morton back in our lives. Obviously, the pitching is not as good today as it was for opening day. So a lot to break down, and let's get into it. Again, appreciate everyone being here. If you want to support the show, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit like. I am the sole producer and everything of this show now. So yeah, if you guys love the show, want to see me keep doing it, the best way to support is watch, listen, and hit that subscribe button. Let's keep growing the channel. I appreciate everyone today hitting the subscribe button. We gained a lot of followers today, so I think that's awesome. So appreciate it, everyone, and let's jump in, have some fun, and talk some baseball. We got Baltimore at Toronto. We have Kevin Gausman and Charlie Morton facing off against each other. 8.5 total in this game. Toronto, a 130 favorite. Yes. Charlie Morton back in our lives. We love Charlie Morton being in our lives, don't we? Kinda. So we have Charlie Morton pitching for Baltimore this season. I think it's going to be a really interesting situation with Morton just all season. What type of pitcher are we going to get Charlie Morton towards the back end of his career? But don't necessarily love or hate this spot for him. Toronto's a really, really sound lineup at the top half. They don't strike out a ton. And we're definitely still attacking strikeouts. Charlie Morton was around like a 24% pitcher. Yeah, I had high hopes for Crochet too. I didn't want to get too much into the slate from Thursday because I tried not to do this. But yeah, definitely very disappointed with Crochet. Am I going to have co-hosts? Yeah, I think people will bounce around and join and have some fun. I had a couple of people reach out to me, old hosts and stuff. So I'll have some co-hosts right now for the first week, 2 weeks or so, 3 weeks or so, getting back into the rhythm of everything. I'm just going to go solo. So Gore was awesome. So, all right, getting distracted. We like getting distracted, but getting distracted here a little bit. So Charlie Morton, everything I read on Morton is he did not top off. He threw 46 pitches as his top off in spring. So I don't really expect Charlie Morton to go too deep in this game anyway. And then you add in the low strikeout Toronto team. Bo Bichette had a great spring. Santander, a huge pickup for them. Jimenez from Cleveland, a nice pickup for them. So overall, probably don't get to Morton today. Really cheap price tag. One of the better hitting conditions in Toronto here. So probably going to pass on Morton. Other side of this game, we get Kevin Gausman. Gausman, not a huge strikeout guy. Baltimore coming off of a huge opening day slate where Rutschman who hit 2 home runs. I think Mullins hit 2 home runs, and Tyler O'Neill continued his streak. He hits a home run every opening day. Just play Tyler O'Neill on opening day. Gausman threw 70 pitches in his last workout and then had a bullpen session in between. So I assume Gausman is in the 80 to 85 range. And again, first starts, most of the time, you're definitely going to be looking at like 80 to 85 pitches from these guys. So I don't love Gausman in this spot. Looking at like his matchup, the low strikeouts from last year, the upside of this Baltimore team, don't think I'll get to much Gausman in my 3 to 5 builds. If you're MMEing, sure, but again, I still think there's going to be plenty of other better strikeout options on this slate. Newpar had a home run, yeah. I mean, St. Louis definitely hit the ball. All right, bats. Love Baltimore. This is a top stack for me. I think that overall, this is a spot I want to be overweight on Baltimore. I don't think it's going to take too much to be overweight on them, but I like Rutschman. I like Kauser, O'Hearn, O'Neill, Mullins again, going back to him. Westberg, if he hits in that 3-hole again, I think all those guys are very much in play. I think this is a great spot for Baltimore. Looking at the pricing, we're not going to get Baltimore this price down very long. Rutschman is a 5K catcher most slates when he's hitting well, so like the upside here for Baltimore a lot. One of my favorite teams on the slate at first look. I am on some expert survey and premium stuff for Roto Grinders tomorrow. Like I said, I'll be doing that stuff a few days a week. Toronto bats. I like Toronto here as well. I mean, Charlie Morton is definitely one of those guys you could pick on. He struggles to both sides of the plate with power more on the right side, which is good for like Vlad and Bichette. Righty-righty matchups. Bichette, again, had an awesome spring. Definitely looked like to fix a lot of the issues that he was having last year and looks healthy. So Bo Bichette very much in play. Vlad very much in play. Santander, Jimenez. I mean, all these guys. I like low strikeout teams. They're going to put the ball in play against a guy like Charlie Morton who gives up a lot of hard contact. So definitely think Toronto's in the mix today for a team we want to target. Pittsburgh at Miami. We have Keller and Gillespie pitching against each other here. Much different matchup from yesterday. Like Mitch Keller, he's a good pitcher, but he's not Skeens. Keller, a much lower strikeout pitcher. So total in this game is 7.5, and the Pirates are 142 favorites. So looking at Mitch Keller here, I mean, he's not a huge strikeout guy. He kind of sat around at like 20 to 21 to 22% last year. Worked 70 pitches in his last spring training outing. So that's good. Always a good note to kind of look and see where those guys are at. But he should be his normal workload here, 80 to 85 pitches, unless there's something that comes out. I mean, the lineup's not great for Miami. Keller, the low strikeouts worry me, but I think he's okay at 7,900 on DraftKings. Like one pitcher site like FanDuel, I don't like Keller as much. He's priced up at like 98. He's definitely priced up for the matchup. So I don't like him as much on FanDuel as I do on DraftKings. I like that he's priced down on DK. We got to use 2 pitchers over there. So definitely could see using some Mitch Keller on DraftKings. More for just kind of like a consistent start here more than anything else. All right, the other side, we got Connor Gillespie pitching for the Marlins. I mean, we saw him a little bit towards the end of last year. We haven't seen a ton of him. He did top out around 80 pitches in spring, which I think is a good number. He has talent. He has upside. His walks and command, the biggest issues for him. You know, that's where he gets into trouble. We didn't see him pitch too deep last year, but obviously going to be a much better and different situation for him this season. Tough matchup here. The top half of this lineup really solid. The bottom half of this lineup doesn't strike out a ton. So I mean, Pittsburgh's going to be a pesky team to face this year. 6,300 is a really cheap price tag for a guy that has some strikeout upside in a great pitcher's ballpark in Miami. So, I mean, you could potentially, if you're playing MME on this slate, take some shots on him, and I wouldn't call you crazy because of the strikeout upside. So that's what I'd be looking at here, is just attacking the strikeout upside for him. But overall, I have more interest in the Pittsburgh bats than I do in Gillespie. Reynolds, Cruz, Bart would be my main three here that I would kind of build around. I think they're more of like a mini stack than a full stack because it is in Miami. Respect the ballpark. Did it have the roof open on opening day? I highly doubt that's going to be the case again here. So, yeah, the little mini stacks is how I would approach the Pittsburgh Pirates on this slate. I don't know like how much Mitch Keller I would really pick on in this spot. He does struggle more with lefties, so kind of helps him. I mean, Conine hit right-handed pitching decently last year, just strikes out a ton. And Keller does have a 24% K rate against left-handed pitching last season, so Stowers is cheap. Edwards going to hit up towards the top of the lineup. You know, he's potentially a guy that's going to get on base and do some damage. But, I mean, Miami is really cheap. So if you want to leave them in there as like a cheap mini stack in some builds, I don't necessarily hate it. Keller's not like this overpowering guy. He does give up enough fly balls and line drives that, you know, there's a little bit of potential here for Miami more than anything else. So we'll see how it kind of plays out lineup-wise, but I assume the lineup's going to be very similar to what we saw on opening day. So Edwards potentially hitting leadoff again. Kyle Stowers hitting in that two-hole. Matt Mervis, man, this lineup, man, what a lineup. But they're cheap. Not the worst matchup, but again, I probably prefer the Keller side more than I prefer the Miami side in this spot. Boston at Texas Rangers, 8.5 total in this game. Boston a 122 favorite. Huge day for Abreu, getting the win for my Red Sox. Tanner Houck against Jack Leiter in this spot. Man, right off the bat, Tanner Houck, right off the bat, like we have to make a decision on what we want to do with him. He had so like he was so decent at the beginning of last year, and then like as the season kind of went along, like we had so many bad outings. I don't know. He was, like I said, he was phenomenal. But here's the thing. I think the decision is kind of made for us on this slate. He was awful in spring training. Again, one of those pitchers that really, really struggled, got hit very hard. He did throw 84, 85 pitches in his last spring training start, but man, he got hit really hard in spring training. And the Texas Rangers have a high upside lineup. I lean the Texas Rangers bats over Tanner Houck personally, so I don't think I'll end up getting much or any of him. I think my pitching pool is going to be pretty tight today, and I don't think he makes it for me. Other side of this game, with Jack Leiter, man, he was really decent in spring stats-wise. He was awful last year in the little amount of time that we got to see him pitch. Command is his biggest issue. From what we saw last year, from what we've seen a little bit in the minors for him, command can be an issue. And then when you have command issues against a team that has home run upside, those don't mix well. So I think I'm going to take the wait and see approach on Jack Leiter. I do think like he has some potential to be really good. I think it's a tough matchup. Adding Bregman to the lineup is a low strikeout guy with power. Adding Story back to the lineup adds some power to the lineup. Abreu had a big season last year, big opening day for him. So don't think I'll get Leiter today. As far as the bats are concerned, I like both of these teams. I think you could stack both of these teams. This is a really interesting game stack if you want to approach it that way. But, yesterday I feel like we weren't talking about a lot of like stacks and stuff. And here, this is probably the fourth team that I've talked about bats that I like. So like Red Sox, Duran Devers had a really bad opening day. He looked lost to the plate. So hopefully he can get it going here in this matchup. I think that it's a good prime bounce back spot for him. You can't look at one game sample size and be like, oh, I don't want to play them. So yeah, I mean, overall, I like the Red Sox. I think that this is a great spot for them and definitely a team I'm going to play a bunch of. With how much Houck struggled in spring, I really like the Rangers today. Like I said on the podcast yesterday, they're typically better against right-handed pitching than they are against left-handed pitching. Seager, we should get Jock Peterson in the lineup today, which adds another power bat to the lineup. Wyatt Langford was crushing the ball in spring training, so I think it's a 5-man stack or like a 4-4 game stack or a 5-3 game stack, however you want to build it. But either way, I think Texas is a team you want to target on this slate. They're still reasonably priced. So definitely a team I want to get some exposure to. Mets, Astros. 8 total in this game. Astros a 142 favorite. We got Hunter Brown going up against Taylor McGill. We'll start here with McGill. Again, it feels like the drop off this year from like day 1 to day 2 pitchers. It's kind of rough. Houston's going to be a low strikeout team. We saw them give Clay Holmes a fit. Taylor McGill had some strikeout upside last year, but he also gave up a lot of hard contact. His WOBA is really high. He typically tries to, induce a lot of ground balls, but we did see him give up more home runs toward the end of last season. But he's not typically a guy that gives up a ton of home runs. He's not my favorite guy to pick on stacks wise because he doesn't give up a lot of home runs. I still think like I'm probably not playing him in this spot against Houston. If you're playing 150, you could potentially leave him in your player pool because of his strikeout ability. I mean, he sat around 26% last year, which is great. His whiff rate was really good. He had a 13% swinging strike rate last year. So like in that aspect, I definitely think you could leave him in your player pool. On the other side here, Hunter Brown. I mean, if Hunter Brown was facing anybody else, I think he'd be the top pitcher on the slate. With that said, I still think he's playable. It's just a really tough spot. I mean, you have to now get through like Lindor, Soto, Alonso at the top half of this lineup. And it's going to be such a tough lineup to beat on a consistent basis this year. Adding Soto is huge. We know how good Juan Soto is. I still think I want to have some exposure to Hunter Brown because of his strikeout ability, his strikeout upside. He sat around 25 to 26% most of last season, and he worked 85 pitches in his last spring training start. So I like the upside, like the strikeout ability for Hunter Brown. So again, I think if he was facing anybody else, he'd be like the clear-cut top option on this slate. But for what it's worth, I don't really have like a clear-cut top pitching option. I don't think there's anyone like safe with a ceiling. So as far as the Mets bats, if I'm going to play some Hunter Brown, I'll probably still end up playing a little bit of Mets. If I build 5 teams, I might have Hunter Brown on one and some Mets on another team. So obviously Juan Soto, Lindor, Alonso is where I'd start. I think that there's still enough value that you could potentially get Soto, Lindor, and Alonso. Soto's really expensive, so you might have to choose between Lindor and Alonso. There's a lot of good shortstop plays typically on every slate. So, I mean, there's some value here. Like Nimmo should be, he's 4K. So I think like he is a potential value play. It'd be interesting to see if like Beatty gets a start here. He did have a good spring training, so I wouldn't be shocked if he gets to start here against the righty. Pinch hit risk, I think, a little bit there for him. I think they're going to platoon these guys a lot, so don't be shocked if you like have a situation where you get pinch hit for in the Mets lineup towards the bottom half anyway. Like Acuna. Definitely like Acuna Beatty. I think it's definitely something you're worried about, like pinch hit risk for. Other side of this game, the Houston side. I mean, again, McGill is not typically a guy I like to stack against because he doesn't give up a lot of home runs. And when he does give up home runs, he kind of gives them up in bunches. But I think this lineup is good enough where if you want to play like Alvarez, Paredes, Walker, Cam Smith is 2,700 here on this slate. So I think like overall, it'd probably be a mini stack for me and just kind of chasing some power. But I don't know. Jordan Alvarez has so much power. He's 5,700. We know how much power Walker has. Paredes seems underpriced at 4,100. I give Dean a lot of crap all the time. Me and Dean have been friends for a long time, so I can give him crap. It's fun. But I respect him, and he was talking about how Paredes has one of the highest pull rates, which is definitely going to play a factor in this Houston ballpark for him. So we move on. I feel like we're cruising. We're cruising today, right? We're moving fast. I don't know. I'm not trying to move fast, but I feel like cruising. What's up, chat? I feel like, yeah, I mean, we haven't talked, chat. What's up, chat? Justin, Dave, Todd. Who else is in there? Derek, Yeezy. What's up, chat? Listen, solo host, like these solo podcasts, they've always been this way. I give my thoughts and move on. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I could be right, I could be wrong. I feel like I'm right more than I'm wrong, so that's always a good thing. We got Cubbies at Arizona facing off against the Diamondbacks. 8.5 total in this game. The Diamondbacks a 135 favorite. We got Tyon against Kelly in this one. I haven't checked how this game is playing out. They're playing right now, right? I haven't looked. I have volleyball practice tonight, so I haven't had a chance to look at the late games. But it looks like this game just got kicked off, and Steelers struggling a little bit in the first. Anyway, so Tyon, we'll start with Tyon. Obviously, I think the Arizona lineup will be a little bit different today than it was on Thursday with the lefty. But Jameson Tyon, his strikeout stuff was way down last year. Very concerning for him. I mean, like it was really interesting because like he made the trip to Tokyo and then like wasn't even on the roster, so kind of got to hang out for a couple days. But his strikeout stuff really concerning last year. I think the Diamondbacks are in a prime position to be a much better team than they were last year. I think Corbin Carroll got healthy, fixed his swing towards the end of last year. We saw him have a good stretch. Josh Naylor adds another left-handed power bat in this lineup. I think the bottom half of this lineup could potentially struggle. It'd be really interesting to see what we're looking at lineup-wise with the righty instead of the lefty, if they're going to play like Grichuk every day. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I worry a little bit about like Tyon strikeout stuff, but he pitched really good to like finish out the season. I guess he got added to I don't know. I'm so confused on like what happened with Tyon in that Tokyo series now that I'm like reading on it. But yeah. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, Tyon's always if he can stay healthy kind of guy. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Air strikeout team. Depending on the lineup, this is going to be like a lineup kind of decision here. Like, what does this lineup look like tomorrow is something that we'll definitely be looking at. Other side here, Merrill Kelly. We don't have like stellar 30% pitcher strikeout guys on this slate overall. Like, we have a couple strikeout guys. Kelly struggles with lefties. He strikes out righties at a very high clip. If they are even close to the lineup that they rolled out on Thursday, Cubs that is, I mean, you're looking at 4 or 5 lefties here. So I like to play Kelly against right-handed heavy teams. I don't think this is going to be a right-handed heavy lineup. He's cheap. He has upside. We know the upside is there for him from time to time. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's another one of those situations. I know I keep saying that on the slate, but I feel like that is where this slate is at with pitching. Is just like don't really love anything. Everything's going to kind of feel uncomfortable with pitching on this one, and especially after a slate where we were just like, all right, we have plenty of pitching. I'm glad I take the weekends off of baseball because I feel like the weekends, after looking at the pitchers that we have on this slate, it's going to be rough weekend slates. We need to get some of those stud pitchers spread out, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, Kelly, maybe large field tournaments, but for me in like a 3-entry to 5-entry type builds, I don't think I'll play Kelly unless the Cubs lineup comes out and it's very right-handed heavy. As far as the Cubs bats, I have interest in the Cubs. You know, Bush, Tucker, Happ, these lefties at the top. PCA, good ballpark. They're on the road, getting that 9th inning here in Arizona. So, yeah, I mean, I have interest in the Arizona bats for sure. You know, now we're getting some, 7, 8, 9 o'clock games. Typically, these 9 o'clock games go a little bit lower owned, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I like Tucker Bush a lot. I like Happ at the top, PCA. I'm sure we'll find another value batter too in here in the Cubs lineup. So yeah, a lot of interest for me in the Cubs today. As far as Arizona goes, I mean, Carroll, Naylor, 2-man, 3-man with Marte. It's expensive. Those obviously the 3 highest price players on the team. That's where it gets a little interesting. I don't mind Gurriel, righty, but he didn't have a ton of power against right-handed pitching last season. And like I mentioned with Tyon, he was really solid limiting the damage against righties, and he really struggled with lefties. So Marte, Carroll, Naylor, maybe McCarthy if he gets a lineup, maybe a little bit of a lineup bump. We could potentially see like Pavin Smith here instead of Grichuk. So Pavin Smith at 2,800, cheap outfielder potentially. So I think Arizona, another team that I'd look to like mini stack here. Atlanta at San Diego. 7.5 total in this game. Padres a 125 favorite. We got Renato Lopez going up against Dylan Cease in this one. I mean, I think it's safe to say like Renato Lopez was one of the most shocking things to happen last season. Like, I know that I didn't expect him to have a 27% K rate and pitch as well as he did. My biggest concern is he struggled with velocity in the minor or in spring training this year. So I'm concerned about that. I mean, there's concerns about like arm fatigue from Renato Lopez. And if he doesn't have the velocity, I worry about like the whiff rate being as high as it was last year, 25%. So he had good stuff last year. If the velocity is there in this spot, he could have a decent outing. The Padres are a very low strikeout team, especially against right-handed pitching. So if you have concerns like me and you don't want to attack like the velocity dip for him, I could definitely see not playing him in this spot. Dylan Cease, I wasn't on Michael King at all yesterday. Played some Braves bats that worked out. I think Dylan Cease has much better opportunity in this spot, just because he's one of the better pitchers on the slate, talent-wise. This lineup's tough, but the bottom half of this lineup doesn't have a ton of power. The top half has power, but they have strikeouts as well. This game's in San Diego and Petco, so like the potential for this one for Cease. And, I mean, he's a good strikeout pitcher. We don't have a ton of good strikeout pitchers. Listen, when you play disc golf all summer or all spring or all winter, whatever I was trying to say, I was shocked that he did not get the opening day nod, but it is what it is. I'm not the head coach of this team, obviously, but I like Cease. we don't have a ton of great pitchers on the slate. I think he's one of the better pitchers on the slate. So I'm just going to play the talent. As far as the Braves bats, I do think Cease gets some ownership today, which makes Atlanta a really interesting leverage spot because, I mean, they're so incredibly talented. Profar at the top, table setter, doesn't strike out a ton, gets on base a lot. You guys were talking about PCA's hair. He just stole second base. Riley, Olsen, Ozuna, Albies, Harris, all very much in play. We get Baldwin at 2,800 as a cheap catcher. He has power. Did a lot of research on him today. Like his potential for the long run. Understand why Atlanta was okay with d'Arnaud. But it'd be interesting to see what happens when like Murphy comes back. If Murphy starts every day. I know he's out for like 6 weeks or so, but yeah, I like Baldwin's upside. As far as San Diego bats go in this spot, I like the idea of attacking Lopez if you're playing San Diego and just stacking them and just saying, hey, this guy's velocity was down. I'm concerned about that. I could see stacking San Diego in this spot. So definitely don't mind it. I prefer like Tatis, Merrill, Machado as like my main pieces and build from there. Jackson Merrill is one of my favorite hitters against left or right-handed pitching. You're going to hear that name a lot this year, always. Big time talent. So I like him a lot in this matchup. If Lopez's velocity is good and his stuff is there, obviously I think that the Padres could potentially struggle, but I think they're going to put the ball in play enough where I still don't want to play Lopez a lot. All right, we got the Athletics. I have to get used to saying Athletics instead of Oakland. And then Seattle Mariners, 7 total. In this game, Mariners a 155 favorite. We have Springs and Castillo facing off against each other. Jeffrey Springs getting the start here for the Athletics. I'll get used to it. I will. It might take me a little while, but I will get used to it. So left-handed pitching against this team has upside. We talked about this a lot last season. They strike out a ton against left-handed pitching. Springs has strikeout ability. His command can be shaky at times, but he has strikeout ability. Being outside of Tampa, I feel like he has the potential to be like a higher pitch count type of guy. He had some fatigue towards the end of last season when they shut him down. And they already kind of said that like they probably won't push him a ton at the beginning of the season. All those red flags to just say that I think he's playable. I mean, I think he throws 80 to 85 pitches here. I think he has some strikeout ability. There's some big bats in this lineup. Don't get me wrong. Julio Rodriguez, Cal Riley, Rosarina. There's plenty of power in this lineup, but they strike out a ton. This team, the projected lineup here, 25% strikeout rate against left-handed pitching last season. We targeted lefties against Seattle last year a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I think Springs is definitely interesting. I worry a little bit about pitch count more than anything else for him. Other side of this game, we got Luis Castillo facing the Athletics. Oakland. The Athletics. I'm going to say it so many times. The Athletics were one of my favorite teams last year. They were a really fun team. Langoliers, Bangoliers, Blade, Roker, Butler, all those guys. So fun to watch in general. I think Luis Castillo very much in play here against this team. We just don't have a lot of great pitching options in general today. So I think we have to kind of play a guy that has some ability to go out and pitch decent. I don't think Luis Castillo has a huge ceiling. If I'm way off and like he's one of the chalkier pitchers on the slate, I would definitely be underweight on him. I still think I'd play a little bit because it's baseball. But, I mean, he's not a huge ceiling guy. I think his highest game last year was like 30 fantasy points, and I think he only topped 30 like 2 or 3 times, 36, I think. I just looked at it. So he'll have those games where he has lights out games, but talent wise, I think he has to kind of make your builds. So, but as far as like the athletic bats, if Castillo starts getting some ownership, Butler, Roker, Blade, Bangaliers, all very much in play. Soderstrom, Tyler, he had decent power against right-handed pitching last season. He's just a big ground ball guy, and Castillo, kind of a ground ball pitcher. So I think that you're definitely targeting like Bangaliers and Butler if you're not playing Castillo here. They profile really well against Luis Castillo. Seattle bats. Again, this team struggles against left-handed pitching. You know, if Springs is on, he could have a big day. The two bats that don't struggle against left-handed pitching in this lineup, Cal Riley and Randy Rosarina. Both of these guys hit left-handed pitching very well with a lot of power. I definitely have exposure to those guys. If you want to make it a three-man, you know, obviously Julio Rodriguez has a ton of power. He did not have the best season ever last year, but I think it's a Rosarina and Riley, and then maybe like a cheap third or just build like a two-man stack. Ryan Bliss, if he cracks the lineup here, I would assume he's going to be the everyday second baseman. He had some pop from what we saw late last year in July. So he hits left-handed pitching well. You could take him as a cheaper second base play. Second base was a wasteland type of position on Thursday. I haven't built any teams yet, but I could see second base being an issue on every slate. Detroit at LA taking on the Dodgers to finish this out here. This game has a 7 total. The Dodgers are 198 favorite. We're going to see very heavily favored Dodgers, I feel like, all year this year. Yamamoto, Flaherty facing off against each other in this one. Jack Flaherty facing anybody else, I'm like super excited to play him. But one of the toughest, if not the toughest lineups to face is this lineup. I mean, Ohtani, Betts, Teoscar, Freeman, Tommy Edman, Will Smith, Max Muncy hits 7. Like, that's how deep this lineup is. Flaherty has a really good K rate. We played him a lot last season for his strikeout ability. I don't think I could do it. You could talk me into it. Just strikeouts alone, give up a few hits, and the strikeouts alone, the upside there. I could see it. Faced the Dodgers a lot, I feel like, towards the end of last year, but yeah. I don't know. I could see playing him, but overall, I definitely prefer not playing him. Dodgers are going to be so good. They're going to be so tough. Like, every time the Dodgers are like out there, it's going to be like, how can I pitch a pitcher against them? That's how it's going to be, I feel. Yamamoto, probably my favorite pitcher on the slate today. You know, just pure matchup wise, I assume this lineup is going to be a little bit more left-handed than it was on Thursday with them facing the lefty, but I don't know how many righties are going to be able to get out of there. Yamamoto, big strikeout rate against righties. Detroit dealing with a few injuries to start the season, like Veerling's out, Meadows is out, Perez is out. So they're dealing with a lot of injuries. So I think the Detroit lineup is a lineup you could definitely pick on to start the season. When you have this many injuries and we have the pitching that we have on the slate, I feel like you're just taking it, taking the Dodgers and being okay with it. So, yeah, I mean, Snell pitched okay, right? Like, I think he had a good game. Forget. I looked at it earlier and I forgot. 5. He only had 2 Ks. So maybe he didn't have a great game. He walked a lot of people. Blake Snell in a nutshell right there. But yeah, I mean, Yamamoto, I think is perfectly fine here. We already kind of saw him go out, throw 70 plus pitches and pitch really well in that Tokyo series against Cubs. So yeah, very interested in Yamamoto. I mean, no real interest in the Detroit bats. You know, Riley Green, the guy that I talk about a lot on the show. Kerry Carpenter, I assume that he'll be in there. He doesn't typically play against lefties. We all know how much I like Kerry Carpenter and Parker Meadows, but I think this is the day I leave those guys on the bench, and I think Yamamoto going to be one of my higher owned pitchers on this one by default. Him and Cease by default. Dodgers. I mean, listen, any pitcher that faces the Dodgers this year, we're going to be like, hey, they're in play for a stack. I think Flaherty is a good pitcher. I think this is a tough matchup, but this lineup is so incredibly good. So it'd be interesting to see. They're the last game. We typically see like these later games have lower ownership. So, and the Dodgers are kind of pricey, but they're not priced up enough where you can't take advantage of it. I mean, Conforto's a huge ad. I assume that him and Paez are gonna platoon, so I assume Michael Conforto will be in the lineup at 3,800 here. We know that Conforto has a little bit of upside in his bat. Edman's still cheap enough. Muncy's still cheap enough. I mean, you could definitely stack like the bottom half and do the wraparound with Ohtani to make your Dodger stacks differently. But I don't think you have to necessarily worry too much about ownership on the slate. I think the Dodgers are in a good spot to play every slate. But I mean, Flaherty's a good pitcher, so they wouldn't be a top stack for me, but they're definitely on the board. Who would be my SP2? My main team right now would probably be Yamamoto SP1 for sure. I haven't built, but I feel like there'll be enough value where like you could just kind of play Cease and play the two better pitchers. So I mean, I think that's where I would start. Like if I were to start a lineup right now, and we had lineups and everything, and we could build lineups right now, I think I would start Cease Yamamoto, if that answers your question, Derek. Hopefully that answers your question. I think that's where I would start on DK. And then on FanDuel, Cease and Yamamoto are so priced so closely. I think I would play Yamamoto on FanDuel as my guy, even though Cease is a little cheaper. The matchup, I think, is a little bit better for Yamamoto than it is for Cease. So I think on FanDuel, I would lean more Yamamoto. Yeah, again, like I think Keller, like I talked about when I was breaking it down, I think Keller is okay for like a 15 to 20 point spot. And I don't think that's a bad like thing today. It's just taking those points. I want to see ownership on Keller, like projected ownership for Keller before I start like giving Mitch Keller thoughts, because I mean, I don't necessarily love it. He really struggled with command in spring. So if Keller starts getting chalky, I'll start playing Marlins before I play Keller. Final last words, right? All right. Morning grind game. Let's play the morning grind game. This is a really interesting, fun slate. I don't know how did the morning grind game do yesterday. I don't have the notepad that I wrote everything down on yesterday. I'm using a different notepad because it's in my living room. So I used a different one sitting here tonight. I don't know how the morning grind game. I hope it did well. All right. I know Matt Wallner didn't do anything. That was tilting. Under 8Ks or under 8K to get 6 or more strikeouts. This hit, right? Hunter Green was my pick yesterday. This one hit. I think looking at upside here and just hoping that he gets enough pitches and his leash is long enough, I think the answer to this question is Jeffrey Springs, because of how much Seattle struggled against left-handed pitching last season. So I'll go there with this question today. Over 8K to score under 15, my bust today. I have to go Flaherty. I like Jack Flaherty. I think Jack Flaherty is very talented. He's pitched really well. Hate the matchup. Dodgers, best lineup in baseball. I'll argue with anybody, top to bottom. They're so good. Hate how good they are because it's every year, I feel like. But, I mean, they're so good. Over 4K to hit a home run today. Do we do it? I feel like we do it. I feel like it just makes sense to do it We're going to do it. Give me my boy Wyatt Langford against my Red Sox. Again, Tanner Houck really struggled in spring training this year. I'm going to pick on him. I'm going to play a lot of Texas, and I hate it because I'm a Red Sox fan, but I got to put that aside. I'm going to play the Wyatt Langford crushed in spring training and hope that he can keep it going here. Under 4K to score more than 10 DK points. We're switching it up. I like the idea of switching this question up. There was a lot of good feedback on this one. So under 10K to score more than 10 D. I know Jock Jams was the other one I was thinking of too. Not going to lie. I'm going to go back to this game. I'm going to go with the guy from today that had a monster game. I think the upside is potentially there again. I'm going to go with Abreu for the Red Sox against Leiter. I mean, this guy had plenty of power. He just struck out a lot last year, and Leiter's not a huge strikeout guy. So I love the fact that Abreu had a big game on opening day, and I'm going right back to him here. Stack to score 6 or more runs. Let's go Baltimore. I like the Baltimore Orioles here. Gausman. Kevin Gausman is definitely a guy that can get blown up. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Baltimore here. Aren't we all glad the Angels are not on this slate? Right? Like we're all just sitting here going, I'm glad the Angels aren't on this slate. I have not looked at props yet. I'm gonna pull it up on the fly here because there are a couple things that I wanted to look at. I'm going to look it up really quick. See, there doesn't seem to be a lot of props out yet. So this one's tough today. The like 2 spots that I really wanted to look at, not posted. I want to look at Tanner Houck unders. Is something that I really like potentially here. So that's one that I'll be looking for tomorrow. Nothing else like jumping off the page here, but we do have the 3-pick parlay. 0 for 1 to start the season. What the heck, right? Like we need to start better than that. But we went 0 for pulling it up here really quick. No, I didn't call the Ramos home run. I said Grant picked him as his turd bombs, and I love that he went yard. I'm waiting for my app to load. I did the 3-pick parlay already, and I'm just waiting for it to load. So sorry. Patiently waiting, even though I'm not patiently waiting. All right, there it is. We have. There it goes. We have Dodgers to win -200, part of our 3-pick parlay. I love the Dodgers in this spot against the Tigers, even though it's Flaherty. I have a lot of interest in Yamamoto. Red Sox Rangers over 8.5 runs is -130. And then the Pittsburgh Pirates to beat the Miami Marlins after the Marlins took the opening day slate of this one. This is +355. Hopefully we can go to the positive side in the 3-pick parlay. +355. Again, one last time, Dodgers outright over in the Texas-Boston game, one of my favorite games on the slate. And then the Pittsburgh Pirates to beat the Miami Marlins. I think Keller pitches okay enough, and I think the Pittsburgh Bats get the job done. Appreciate you all. It's always fun talking baseball. It's been great to be back to the last couple days. Like I said, I don't know what my schedule is going to be, but I'm going to try to post the morning grind on YouTube in advance so everyone can kind of see when I'll be live. I've been posting it I think I posted 11 a.m. today, so everybody could see that I was going again. I have not looked at Monday's slate. I will be honest with you, Mondays are going to be a lot more miss than hits for me as far as the podcast, because I do have so much NASCAR stuff on the weekend, so I'll probably take a lot of Sunday nights off. So you'll probably see me back on Monday night, Tuesday slate, and I appreciate everyone for hanging out. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Support the show. Yeah. I do, really quick, let me know in the comments, because I'm not going to say live, but let me know in the comments, would anybody be interested in a very low dollar membership to support the morning grind where I would provide a couple betting picks daily? Let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in, or tweet me at Stevietpfl. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. I was looking at like the membership stuff to help support the podcast, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do that. And so it wouldn't be a lot. Listen, it'd be like $3 to $5. It wouldn't be a lot, but if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know in the comments. Appreciate everyone. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you again, like I said, probably on Monday night for Tuesday's slate.